Welcome, everybody. So glad that you're with us. I want to welcome some folks I recognize here in the meeting. Carolyn Colonna, how are you doing? Good to see you on here. Sister Donna Ciangio at Archdiocese of Newark. So glad you're with us. Sister Janet is with us. Also want to say hi to Paul Brignola. We had a great talk this week. And let's see who else. Father Riz in Simi Valley. Good to see you, Father Riz. I was just with you a few weeks ago as well. So, this topic of leading from the second chair, I can't believe it took us this long to get to it. It's so important, especially in the church. And it's becoming more and more important, right? As we have less and less vocations, less and less. We have pastors that are over a family of parishes now, and each of those locations probably has a second chair leader that's first chair on location, but second to the pastor. Lots of pastoral associates, just a lot of great lay people and some ordained leading from the second chair. So last week we talked to Mike Bonham, the author of the book Leading from the Second Chair. I really encourage you to check it out. I got a call from somebody this week that had a question that I could just point them straight to the book and say, check out this chapter in the book. It'll help you out. So this week, we're talking with a couple of second chair leaders that I've worked with in the past, and we're going to hear from them. I interviewed them about kind of real life. What's it like leading in the second chair, and what advice do you have for others? So why don't we just jump into those now? The first one is Molly Wyrens. Molly is at Christ Our Light Parish in Princeton, Minnesota. They were a part of our virtual learning community a couple years ago, and I got to work with her and Father Kevin there. And if you have any questions regarding anything that you hear in these next two conversations, please just click that Q&A button at the bottom on your toolbar, not your pool bar, and let us know, and we will answer those for you the best we can. So let's go now. This is my conversation with Molly Wyrens, Pastoral Associate at Christ Our Light. Molly, thank you for joining me today. And as we've been talking, you said you've been working in parish life for 13 years. You were in faith formation previously, and now you're a pastoral associate. What was the biggest change in moving from a more specialized role to a pastoral associate, a kind of a generalist role?
Very exciting, actually, just because I was excited about the different possibilities, that were presented. My role here has been primarily pastoral care and social concerns. Those are kind of my areas that I cover. But pastoral care really allows for more of that shared ministry with the pastor, and kind of more that team approach to responding to crises, doing some visioning, doing some support for families, making sure that we're covering bases in terms of checking in with people in the parish. So I knew from that standpoint that it was going to be more exciting, just because it was more general, like you said, that it's broader than just that family piece. But I will say that the family piece did, because of that history for 5 years doing that, then I had the trust of those people. And so then moving into this next role of doing outreach with them in terms of support, in terms of connecting with them, making sure that they're, doing all right. It was nice to have those relationships, already established. And in terms of leadership, I think people definitely see that shift, which is, especially in the Catholic Church, is really good, because especially for women, they don't have that and they don't see that as much. And so I know from that standpoint, people are really appreciative of that even we have a new parish administrator, and and he said, you're number 2 here, so tell me more about that. And I'm like, it was just nice to be recognized as that. I'm like, okay, wow, here's somebody who vocalized that, yes, this is true.
Yeah. What's been the hardest part of it?
Sometimes knowing the role, how much should I step in? What should I be doing? Is this a place where I should jump in a little bit more, mostly related to maybe staff stuff, and kind of how we do things on staff. We have a great staff, but how do they see me? how can I help facilitate relationships among all of us a bit. And then also offer challenge sometimes when I see there's things that maybe we should be doing differently. And so trying to decide kind of when to step in and when to kind of let things go. I think that's probably the biggest one.
How do you discern that? Is it, your communications with your pastor? Is it take a while to kind of figure out where the boundaries are, where he wants you to have freedom and where you really need to defer to him or seek his
Yeah.
guidance?
Yeah, and the good thing is I try to be pretty transparent with him. So it's not like I, just walk in and say, "Hey, I'm going to do XYZ." But just recently we had an incident where there was something that happened where we all were really affected on staff in kind of a hard way. And so I was trying to figure out how can I help to kind of do a debrief, if you will, with our staff on what had happened. And I was really grateful to be able to move into that role to help with that. And I think Pastor appreciated it too, because it would have been hard for him to facilitate that because he was involved in some of what had happened. So that was something that really, it was kind of a quick discerning because we had to kind of do it in a way that got at it pretty quickly. But sometimes it's like that. And then sometimes it's saying, "Hey, I'm just kind of wondering if we take this approach," and talking to him about it a little bit. And he's, luckily I have a pastor who's really open to change and open to discussion and open to new ways of thinking and allowing other people to lead it. So it's not like, "Okay, I don't want you to be in the driver's seat on that." It's like, go for it, so I'm really, appreciative of that too.
How often do you guys communicate?
We have we have staff meetings each week, so that's been really good. And then from time to time, I'll just set up time with him, just to say, "Hey, you know what, let's check in and see where things are at in terms of parish, but also how are we each doing, so we can kind of monitor and help each other out too in terms of workload or stress, whatever that might be." We could be better at that than we are. But I think that, we try to at least do that. And I wouldn't say it's a lot. I mean, I would say a couple times a month. But at that staff meeting is where lots of stuff comes up too. So
So you said talk about how you're both doing workload stress. That sounds like kind of a vulnerable, like frank. Is that what that's
Mhm.
like?
Yeah, I mean, it's, because we check in personally, for sure. How are things going? We both have aging parents, so that's been something we've shared recently. And then ministerially, how are we looking in terms of what's happening pastorally with our people? And also sometimes, you know, even just there's times when even what's being preached on, how things are being preached on, that's a little bit harder discussion because we have a really good pastor who does some really good work with preaching, but we're also all human, and so it's able to say, "Hey, just want to check in on, the preach you did a couple weeks ago, like, oh, I'm just wondering about XYZ." Or if there's something that happens on a Saturday night where he's preached something, I might, and I'm like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, where'd that come from?" Or "That's just coming off really weird." I feel confident enough to say, "Hey, I'm just going to put this out there. Like, this is what that felt like. So you can decide what you're going to do with that, but here's just a perspective."
Wow. I mean, that's great. It's an incredible level of trust that
Yeah.
he has with you and vulnerability on his part. And I know everybody listening doesn't have that luxury.
Right. Right.
But if you are, or if you're a pastor listening, listen, having somebody give you some feedback after that first homily of the weekend is incredibly valuable. And if you will be vulnerable enough to say, "Hey, how did that go? Anything that you felt like needs to be more emphasized, anything I need to dial back, any ideas you have," that's part of that collaboration process, and it can just make everything so much better, right?
Yep. Yeah, and you keep practicing that. The first couple times it is tough, but I think once that level of trust gets there and you get to a spot where you trust each other with the comments, and also as second in command, I also have to say it's their decision. Like, I am just putting this out there. So if they don't take my advice, it's like, I have to let go of that and not, take it personally. So even though it would be a better idea, but no, just kidding. I'm just kidding. But yeah, I think that is something though about, kind of being in that second chair is I also have to just, the reality is it's second chair. So, I can get upset and like, gosh, why didn't he do what I told him to do? Or, take that more, and it's like, I can worry about that. I can stress about that, but it's kind of wasted. I kind of have to just get to a point where it's like, okay, like that's the direction he's going. And I have to just support him in that and just know that I put forth a good effort in trying to share what I felt too. Because if I don't say anything, then of course I'm going to be really upset, but that's my fault. It's like, you didn't say anything either, So
Sounds
yeah.
like that ability to not take it personally and to let it go is a really important part of your job.
Oh my gosh, huge. Yeah. And especially because, parishioners will come up and say things too. And so being able to, just take some things seriously and some things like, okay, well, that's that person. And I know a little bit of their background and I can see why they're going to say that. And so is that going to be something that's going to help me and be more life-giving for me? Or is it going to totally diminish my energy and not be important to remember? Yeah.
I think there's a difficulty to that. There's also a great freedom, right? Of being like, hey, in the end, the buck doesn't stop with me. Like, if it's
Right. Yeah.
both good and bad.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
right.
Yeah. No, there's great freedom in that. And then sometimes frustration.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
want to go back to something you said earlier about how you guys check in with each other. Because I just think communication, checking in, keeping things, I like keeping short accounts is what I've heard a lot of people say. Hey, is there any way I can serve you better? Is there any way that I'm
Mm-hmm.
falling short for both
Mm-hmm.
of you? Right.
Yeah.
But there was
Mm-hmm.
something that you said about that reminded me. Brene Brown has a little clip that's popular recently about her and her husband. And I know if we're honest, not doctrinally, but situationally, you kind of have a marriage, the two of you working together every day.
Right. Right. Yep.
And just to clarify, Father Kevin is not married to Molly.
Yes.
Um,
Yes. Thank
but
you.
something she said is that her and her husband, when they come home, they go, "What percent are you at?" And I may say 30, and he's like, "That's okay. I'm at 70. How can I help pick up some of that for you?" Or it might be reverse, but we know where each other's at, and if both of our numbers add up to less than 100, we know we need to sit down and figure out how we're going to navigate this. Maybe pull some people in to help us out. So I'm just throwing it out there as a practice that
Yeah.
that I think could really help you work together and kind of know where each other's at.
Yeah. No, that's really good, John. And I had heard that too. And I thought there was a lot of wisdom in it because it really allows you not to get frustrated either with that other person. I mean, it cuts down on that because you know that like there's something going on and I have to take that into account.
Her book Dare to Lead is great. We've talked about it here before. Um, I recommend it. It's great for a staff to go through together because it just promotes
Yeah.
this culture of vulnerability and navigating conflict and change in a healthy way. I want to talk about the hard things more because I know that's people aren't tuning in just to hear the good stuff that they already know is easy.
Right.
Let's talk about dreams. Your pastor has dreams for your parish. You have dreams for your parish. How do you navigate that? Like his dreams, your dreams. How do you guys collaborate on that?
Well, we always tease our pastor that when he goes on vacation, we get really worried because he comes back with more dreams than we can handle. Because he is very visionary. So it's when we do some of that, it's fun. We have a lot of extroverts on our staff that have a ton of creativity. So it can be a little challenging at times because everybody's like, putting their stuff out there. So we always have to, do a big, hard, realistic look at what's possible and, where are we at and what will be the most feasible for us to do with the energy that we have. But I would say, our pastor will come with, some things that he wants to do or, direction that he wants to go. And we're pretty good at, luckily, being honest and saying, hey, yeah, that sounds good, or no, I don't think we can do that one right now. And so I think there's good give and take back and forth with that, because we'll come in too and say, hey, what do you think about this? Or, how is it that we could maybe do something about XYZ? And there's a lot of openness to it. And so, and then also people on staff too, because it's a staff thing versus just, Kevin or I. So I really appreciate that input, because I think that makes all of us better and all of us on the same page. Because even recently we were doing our calendar for the year, and it was great because, I mean, it was hard too, just because of course all of us want our thing, right? But it was a good reflection too of like how much we're doing, who's doing what, and where does it fit. And so I think that was really helpful. And there isn't a sense of the pastor's dream gets the number one go, it's like, okay, we hear that, it's in the mix, but it's not like, oh, okay, we'll go do that. It's like, well, if enough of us feel like it's a good thing, then we'll do that. But it's not just because it's your vision.
That's
So I
great.
think that's healthy.
I almost wish your parish culture wasn't so healthy, so we could really speak to some of the challenges that people are facing.
Oh, believe me, we got some challenges.
Yeah, I mean, that's that's
Yeah.
on my side of things. I see that no matter how great a parish is or how big they are or successful they are, when I get in with the leaders and talk about what's really going on, there's always a lot of challenges.
Yep.
Do you sometimes I love that you're talking about as a staff collaborating on dreams and vision for the future, which I think is so important. I think a hugely important part of that, if you're listening, if you're a pastor, if you're a first cheerleader or even a second cheerleader, be the last person to speak. Do not come together for a brainstorming session or dreaming of the future and you go, hey, I really want to hear from all you guys, but here's some thoughts that I had. Because you're just muddying the water. And if you have any people that are people pleasers, they're immediately going to jump on board with what you want, and it's just killing the creativity of the conversation. But what about when do you sometimes kind of help your pastor with kind of filtering those dreams, like, hey, Father, our staff is really too overwhelmed right now to throw that out there? Do you help him kind of navigate when and how to share those ideas?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it's hard to get to him before he throws it out there, because he's pretty excited and he's an extrovert and thinks out loud. But I will say he's also really good. Well, he's 8 times out of 10, he's good at listening to our feedback. I mean, there's times when he's like, nope, I still think we should do this. And then we're like, okay. But for the most part, I think what helps is that he'll throw something out there and we'll respond. And so by the time we're done, he still has a lot of what he's shared in it, but it may it'll probably be changed or tweaked in some way that made it better, and so that's good, because then we're all on board with it, and he's been able to at least share the idea and get that across so that he can feel good about, the vision that he had and what he was hoping to do. So that works out pretty well.
I think that 8 out of 10 thing you mentioned is really important. If sparingly use your unilateral decisions, your command performances, right? If it happens all the time, great people are going to leave, and the people that are going to be left are yes people who are still not happy, but they're just there. But if you use it sparingly and really listen to their pushback and their voices, wouldn't you say then when they do say we're doing this anyways, they built some equity and trust with you that you go, okay, I know this isn't going to happen all the time, I can say yes now.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, absolutely. And we also remind him when he's not listening very well, we also remind him of that, to say, because we have different groups in our parish who, finance, stewardship, buildings and grounds, faith formation, liturgy. And sometimes it's like, okay, well, we have these groups and they're supposed to be making decisions, but you come in and you're making the decisions. Then why are we having these groups? So with parishioners, we also have to sometimes challenge him to listen a little bit better, because sometimes there's a tendency just to go in and say, hey, we're doing this. And it's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. You're invalidating this whole process right now. So, and And that's happened a couple of times where we've had to just do a little check-in about that.
Not that this would happen to you, but it's always fun as a staff member to hear something for the first time from the pulpit that we're doing.
Right.
I've even heard something from the pulpit that we're doing next week that
Ah!
requires all of us to be on board, and we just found out the same time you did. That's
Does not go over well. No, no,
not
no,
that
no.
that's ever happened to you.
No, no.
Hey, so I want to close with a couple things. If you could just give a word to first chair leaders about their relationship with their associates or whoever that person is, what would you say are some of the most important things for them to remember in that relationship?
Good question. I think so. I'm going to use the rule of Benedict for a moment, because the rule of Benedict started with listen with the ear of your heart. So I think listening is huge, but I also think be sure to affirm, because so often I think chair one leaders think, well, it's their job. Like they should be doing what they're doing. So why do I say good job? Or even to say thank you. To say thank you goes such a long way. And I know in ministry, just lately, I'm just hearing more and more people who they're just not hearing accolades, or not even accolades, just affirmation and thank you from their fellow staff or their bosses. And it's like, how did we get into that? We're a staff of a church. And, you look at Paul's letters and it talks about giving thanks and praise for people all the time, So just to remember that, to listen, to offer affirmation, and to invite people into conversation, because I think the more that you can say, hey, why don't we talk about that? That's huge. And also, I think it's okay to give space and time. So for instance, if I come to you with an idea, to just not to shut it down right away, but to say, you know what, let me just think about that, because then that gives me the hope that you're listening and that you're going to put some time into it. And I appreciate that you want to take time to think about it instead of just saying, oh no, we can't do that, or oh sure. Either way, I think it's better to just have a little bit of time and to say, yeah, let me just think about that. Let's chat again on Tuesday instead of, just making the decision now.
Yeah.
So I think those are the things I would say.
That's great. That's great. On that second point, I would encourage leaders to use the Brene Brown phrase, "Tell me more."
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It
Yep.
gives you time to process. It gives you time to better understand. It also lets the person know that you're curious. You're not just
Yeah.
shooting it down. You're not just
Yep.
immediately making a snap decision.
Mm-hmm.
So think about responding, whether you're for it or against it. Think about responding with "Tell me more" when these folks share ideas or feedback with you, especially feedback that might feel a little
Yeah.
bristling at first.
Right. Right. Exactly. Yeah. No, that's a really good one. I like that.
Well, here's your second question. If speaking to other second chair leaders out there,
Oh yeah.
what would be your a couple of your primary things that you'd recommend or encourage them in?
Um, I'd say remember what chair you're in.
Mhm.
And that there's a lot more that you can do sometimes in that second chair than you think, because you don't have some of the really, really hard responsibilities and things that, the other folks have to do. So take advantage of that. And then also just believe in your goodness, and also that you um, don't think of it so much in terms of hierarchy, but that you are in your role, and there's things you're going to be able to do and things you're not, and not to waste energy on the things that you can't, because that's going to take away from what you can do. And we can lead from whatever chair we're in. So just take advantage of that.
Molly, thank you so much. Love you guys, love your parish and all the stuff you're doing there. And it's been great to watch your journey. So thank you for sharing your wisdom and experience with us today. I know it's been helpful to everybody listening.
Hey, thanks, John, and thanks for all the ways you've also accompanied us on that journey, and blessings on all the second chair and the first chair people.
Great stuff there with Molly. It's been a joy to work with her and her parish, and some really good insight and experience there. And next we're going to talk to Deacon Don Huntley, and I asked both of them many of the same questions, but you'll see they both, due to their relationship with their pastor, approach it in different ways. And so that's something that there are as many unique first and second chair relationships as there are unique people. And in each one, you're navigating personalities, gifts, dynamics, communication styles, all of those things. Very important. Before we get to that with Deacon Don, I want to let you know about something new that we're doing at Parish Catalyst. And I actually got your input on this last month. I asked you if we were to do a one-day workshop in your town for parish leaders to come to, what would you want it to be? And you gave us some great feedback. You said number one, volunteer development and leadership development. And you said number two, engaging parishioners, parishioner engagement. And number three, you said reaching young families. So those are going to be the three workshops that we're doing. And we are bringing Parish Catalyst on the road. And we're going to come to towns across the country. And we're going to do one-day workshops where we invite about 10 parish teams, pastor and 3 or 4 leaders to come for a day. We're going to do our interactive experience where you learn from experts. You do some team time interactively with your team, whiteboarding things, discussing, evaluating, then learning from other teams that are there as well, and coming up with a plan for that specific topic. So our first one's going to be in Orlando, and it's going to be on the 29th or 30th of September. That's a Friday or a Saturday. So I'm going to poll you now, and here's what I need to know. Teams based on their employees, their staff, some days work better for some than others. But here's what I want to know from you is, what would work better if we were to come to your town to do a one-day workshop for your parish leadership team? That could include some key leaders who are volunteers. But if your staff and whatever those leaders would be, we're going to participate, what day would be better for you? Would it be a Friday or a Saturday? So the poll should be in front of you now. And if you'll just click on which day you would rather bring your team to, a Friday or a Saturday, let us know. And that's how we're going to plan these things, on what works best for you and your teams. I know that some parish staff is just a pastor and maybe an admin, and everybody else are lay leaders. And so we want to hear from those parishes as well. We're getting some good responses. We've got, let's see, 19 folks so far. There's a few of you holding out there. If you can, let us know what your thoughts are. All right. We're getting a couple more. I'm going to close it in just a few seconds here. All right. We're getting about a 60-40, 60% Friday, 40% Saturday. We're going to end it with that. All right. Thank you for your feedback. Good for us to know. If you are in the Orlando area, it looks like it's going to be Friday, September 29th, Orlando, Florida, location to be announced. But if you look in your chat window there's a link to get more information on it. Or if you want to bring us to your town, go to our website, look for citywide workshops, and let us know. We would love to talk to you about bringing a citywide workshop to your town. Okay, we're going to go now to my conversation with Deacon Don Huntley. He is the pastoral associate at Our Lady of the Assumption in Ventura, California. They are currently in a diocese-based workshop that is in the Santa Barbara region of the Archdiocese of Los Angeles. They're in a workshop with in a learning community with 7 parishes there in Ventura. We're going to be visiting them for our second meeting in about a month. But he's just such a great leader, great second chair leader. So let's look at what he has to say about that role and how he navigates it with his pastor. Well, hello, Deacon Don. So good to see you. And how are things out there in sunny Southern California? Are you experiencing the same brutal heat that we are?
Well, first of all, great to see you, John. Thanks for the invitation. And I'm happy to say at this point in time, we are not. That's why we call it God's country. Everybody inland's baking, and we're 70s and 80s and just enjoying the summer here in Ventura.
Are you guys hiring?
Are we hiring? We do have a position open that we're hiring for. You're welcome to interview. If you may be overqualified, but I'd hire you in a second.
I bet there's a lot of people watching this that are sitting in 105-degree weather that are like, Ventura, I could move. That sounds
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
Well, let's jump into our topic here. We've worked together for a few years now. And as I was working on this, I thought, Deacon Don, he would be great for this conversation. There are many different second chair roles, many different second chair types of leaders. But the deacon has a unique second chair role in a parish. And so I want to first just hear, like, tell us about your journey to second chair leadership in the church. What's that been, just in brief? Like, how did you get there, and what experience did you bring into that?
Sure. As a deacon, it was a long experience, John. I'm going to just make it very brief, but I went to the seminary for 3 years to study to be a priest, and then took a leave of absence. And as my wife Diana likes to say, it's been a long year. It's been a wonderfully long year, but discerned marriage and family, and but that original call never went away, and it was God's people in the parish, as Diana and I would minister as a couple and minister as parents, that began asking me and asking her, Don, never thought about being a deacon. So that's where that call came from. Now, I had no idea really what the role of a deacon was. And so it was through the formational process that you understand it, theologically, liturgically, ministerially. And it took 2 or 3 years, actually, after being ordained, for the people to really teach me what it meant. And so what it means, first and foremost, is you make a vow to, obviously, for us, it's the Archbishop. And so whatever you're doing, it's following the call as he defines it. And then you're assigned to a parish, and your role is to support the pastor in the pastoral needs of the parish. And that can mean all kinds of different things. We have 7 deacons at our parish. We all have that common role, but we all serve in uniquely different ways based on needs of the parish and whatever gifts we have and what the pastor wants us to do. So it was a whole process, like anything in life, of discernment and constant discernment.
So how would you describe that role? Aside from your deacon duties, how would you describe your role in the parish? Like, on the org chart, what are your responsibilities aside from those things?
So my responsibilities are different than the other 6 deacons because I'm actually full-time employed here at the parish as a pastoral associate. So whereas the other gentlemen have their jobs if they're not retired, and then they do ministry in and around those responsibilities, always keeping family first. For me, it's being here full-time and then serving in the role of pastoral associate. Here at this parish, it's primarily my role is faith formation, from preschool children to those of us who are more experienced in life. And it's sacramental prep, which is necessarily a part of all of that, again, from baptism to the very end, right? So, and I don't run all these programs, but I support all these programs. Now, some of them I do serve as a leader or coordinator, or Diana and I do together, for example, RCIA. But all of these are team-oriented approaches. So I guess one of the things I would highlight is a second chair means understanding the vision in the parish and how the pastor is leading that vision. And there is a leadership role for sure, but that leadership is helping identify and empower other leaders in a team approach to ministry. At least that's how it is at our parish.
So you're an advocate for the pastor's vision. You're a ambassador of the pastor's vision. You help execute the pastor's vision. Do you have like a staff management position? Like, is there like kind of, do you help manage across the board the staff and the leaders of the parish?
I do not. I share that. So between our business manager who manages those responsible who are employed or volunteering in the parish for the functioning parts of the parish, our associate pastor who has the role similar to mine but different, and so there are certain pieces to this the whole picture that he's in charge of and leads and executes, and then I have some too. So for example, youth ministry and religious education, I supervise those who are employed and those who are volunteered for that. I'm responsible for making sure things are functioning correctly, and everybody has the support they need to be successful in their roles, but not the entire functioning of the parish.
If you could describe for us your day-to-day working relationship with your pastor, what does that look like?
Well, it normally begins with Mass, 8 o'clock Mass. Now, normally it's either he or our associate pastor or the presiders. But if Father Leon has the early morning Mass, then I usually see him right afterwards, and it's just okay. What's going on for the day? Now, since he's been Episcopal vicar and he has 2 full-time jobs, there's days I don't see him in the morning and I won't see him all day long. But we will anticipate that by having a meeting the day before or a couple of days before. And then we just augment that with phone calls as needed too. So, but I'd say I've never really thought of it before, but there is a real strategy and a functioning role in those conversations. But I love how it begins with Mass.
That's great.
Yeah.
Do you have like a regular communication schedule aside from that, like certain day of the week that you meet for, or
we do as a staff on Thursday mornings. We have a huddle at 11 o'clock. That just seems to work with everyone's schedules well. And before he was Episcopal vicar, he almost never missed those. Sometimes he'll have to miss those, but he'll oftentimes call in. So he'll be on a cell phone as we're all huddling together. For he and I, no, I would say we don't, but it's more as needed, and that would be initiated either by he or by myself. And it's just a simple matter of, hey, in the next 24 hours, I need to go over a few things with you. I need your input on a few things. I need your direction. Or he'll say the same thing. Yeah. I need to go over something with you. I need you to execute something. I need your advice on something. And then we just go, okay, look at the cell phones this day, this time, whether it's in person or it's a cell conversation.
So talk about that a little more. I need your advice on something. In this webinar series, we've talked about how, it's not your dreams, it's the pastor's dreams, and it's not your final decision, it's the pastor's final decision on a lot of things, but you have opinions and you have dreams. And how do you navigate that? How do you negotiate all of that? How's that work?
I was thinking and praying about this yesterday, about our conversation, not having any idea what your questions would be. And the clearest answer I can give you is scriptural. It's the wedding at Cana. So the Blessed Mother is my patroness as a pastoral associate. And so there are times when it may be my idea, it may be my dream, it may be my strong opinion, but oftentimes it's needs in the parish. And then I might have my own opinions, but I know this need needs to be presented, whatever the solution is going to be. And so whether it's my own, it starts in my own heart, or somebody else has a need, or it's something serious, I tell them, look, give me some time to talk to our pastor and he'll give us direction on this. And so then I go to him, I try the best I can in the spirit of the Blessed Mother and say, okay, they're out of wine. There's this huge need. I'm putting it before you because I know only you can give the direction. You need to make this decision. You need to tell us how this is going to happen. And sometimes I'll tell him right out, I've got some strong opinions about this. Or sometimes I just wait, and eventually he's going to say, well, what do you think done? So either way, but in the end, it's okay. Just do whatever he says. That's my approach. When we're all said and done, whatever his decision is, and I don't always agree with him, but he is the pastor, and I am absolutely convinced that in ministry you need a shepherd. Okay, and there's only one shepherd, and that's important. And so we go with that direction, and then I have supreme confidence because I also know he's always going to adjust as needed. So it doesn't have to, the direction he gives doesn't have to be the end all be all. It'll get adjusted. So then I go to people and I say, okay, this is what Father Leon has given us. This is how we're going to approach this. How we're going to attack this. And I might get some blowback from them. Oh, well, that's not going to suffice. This, that. Hey, we're going to do whatever he told us. And sometimes I'll actually use this passage and say, trust. He's the shepherd. The Spirit's going to work through him. And we have a shepherd who's not an autocrat. So he's going to watch and he's going to listen and he's going to adjust.
Yeah, it's interesting because the next question I had here is how important is trust in your relationship? So it's interesting that you go there. And it sounds like you have a lot of trust that even when you disagree with him, you trust his heart, even though you may not agree on the action that he's deciding to take. Talk about the importance of maintaining that trust in the relationship, and even like the example that you gave. So it'd be easy to go to them and say, hey, I don't think this is a good idea, but it's what Father Leon wants to do, so we just got to do it. Or you can go, as you said, and say, hey, this is what Father Leon wants to do. Let's trust him together. Mm-hmm. Talk to those second tier leaders out there that may struggle with this. Talk to them about how important it is to present a united front, one of supporting your pastor no matter what.
Right. I'll give you two metaphors. One would be parents raising children. Okay. My wife and I don't agree on a lot of things, but for the most part, our children never knew if we had divergent opinions because we would come to some conclusion as to how we were going to deal with whatever the situation is. So, a lot of it has to do with communication. Trust erodes if you don't have regular and good and quality communication. And then you have to be able to come to solutions. And compromise sometimes is in the case of you take a middle road. Okay, well, we'll take some of your good ideas and some of your, but raising children in ministry, there's a lot of times compromise is not possible. You have to choose one or the other. And so then we would take turns as a husband and a wife. And we say, okay, you feel strongly about this, we're going to go your way. And I'm going to support it 100%. I'm not going to submarine it, whatever. And then at some point we'll evaluate, and then we'll figure out where we go from there. And I can't tell you how many times I was convinced my way was the right way. We did it my wife's way. And I went, oh my God, this is awesome. Yeah, I'm glad we did it this way. Occasionally there was a crash and a burn, and it's like, okay, well, next time we're going to go this way. But our children never knew the difference. They only saw a united front. Yeah. And then the other would be just the tradition of our church of the importance of obedience, whether you're in a religious order, whether you're in a family, the domestic church, that obedience is important. But it's hard to be obedient if you don't trust. And so trust, first and foremost, is in the Lord, right? That the Lord is working in and through these people, whether it's our own family, our spouse, our pastor, lay leaders, whatever. The Holy Spirit's alive, and we give room for the Holy Spirit. So we trust that. But then, too, that we trust that God's selected these people to be in this situation in the now as God's instrument of the Spirit. I'm not the only one who can be the instrument of the Holy Spirit, right? Can the Spirit work through me? Yes. But in all humility, I'm the most effective pastoral associate when I see individuals as instruments of God's Holy Spirit, and I'm discerning, okay, how is the Spirit trying to break through here? And then I just try to support that. Okay. Now, interesting, you said trust. Trust works both ways. So I know Father Leon trusts me. I know he does a couple of different ways. There will be people that will tell me they have conversations with Father Leon and they'll say, do you realize how much he trusts you? And they'll share something that he said. That's very affirming, right? I also know he trusts me because there's times, and it's been more when he's been serving as Episcopal vicar and away from the parish, and a decision has to be made now, and I can't get a hold of him. And whether it's me making the decision or it's on the spot, oftentimes it's with our associate priest, our business manager. In the end, when the decision's made and delivered, we know when he gets back, it's not going to be second guessed in front of anybody who's affected by that. He may say, hey, in the future, this is the way I want it done. But for everyone else, he's going to say, they made the best decision, or he made the decision that I put him in place to do. I fully support it. So it works both ways. And I can trust him more because I know he trusts me.
That's great. That's fantastic. And I can't, if you're watching this and you're in a relationship that is not built on trust or does not have trust, just a tough place to operate. This is a marriage. And if there is not trust, I don't see how that marriage works.
It's such a big factor, John, that if for whatever reason we had a change in pastors, and after a significant amount of time, this type of relationship wasn't possible, that would be clear to me that it's time for me to move on, because I know I can't be effective any other way. And so with every effort to build that with a new pastor, that would be clear to me, the Holy Spirit saying, I have another place for you.
Yeah, it's not just a job, is it? It has to be way more than that.
Right.
So I have a little curious question for you. I would imagine someone in your role at times helps the pastor out by deflecting things from him or taking heat for things or having hard conversations that you can take off of his plate so that he can be more in a shepherd role. Is that something that is a part of your job? And what does that look like?
Absolutely. 100% in many, many different ways. And again, this is my 8th year in this role, and I've only served as a pastoral associate with Father Leon. I've been a priest at, I've been a principal at Catholic schools, working with pastors, many different pastors, but in this role, only him. And I know intuitively now, but also because he's made it clear that there's certain things that he would just rather I shield him from, or I just take on. I know without a doubt how he wants it handled, and he just doesn't have the time to be peppered by these kinds of things. And John, honestly, in ministry, a lot of times that's the same person over and over and over and over, right? It's like death by popcorn, stoning to death by popcorn. So okay, well, and it's not just me on the staff. We all know we have this role in different ways. But sure, if I could give you an example, we've all been to confirmations, right? Where a large number of people are being confirmed, and normally it's a bishop there or whoever the bishop designates. Well, you'll almost never see that large of a liturgy confirmation without a master of ceremonies. What's the master of ceremonies job? Well, first of all, to know everybody else's job, to make sure things run smoothly, right? Sometimes people make mistakes, and a good master of ceremonies, people don't recognize it because the master of ceremonies sees that and steps in right away and doesn't highlight the mistake, makes the person feel good, supports them, moves them in the right direction, smooths it over, whatever. But master of ceremonies also has an important role before and after the confirmation. It's people that want to insert themselves and get to the bishop or the presider for their own personal agendas and take time and attention where it's not supposed to be. It's not the focus of a confirmation. And you're always looking for that and intercepting. You're just shielding the bishop, you're shielding whoever the presider is. And at the same time, you have to be You have to listen to them. You have to be loving. You have to be gentle, but you have to be firm, and you have to give them something so they're heard. Okay, the bishop can't take care of this right now, but come to me afterwards. Or when the bishop's done taking pictures, instead of basically photobombing and trying to get the bishop's attention, come to me again, and we'll see about whatever your issue is, and we'll come to a conclusion. So it's that kind of role.
Mhm. Yeah, that made me think of something. I've been in a second chair role, I've been in a first chair role. And when you're in that first chair role and you're at an event, right? What people really want is to connect with you. They want to feel like you see them, you connect with them, because they don't get to see you out in the wild often, right?
Right.
So in the second chair role, it's really important if you can make sure all the details are taken care of, where the pastor's not having to worry about them and he can actually just be with the people. That's huge. It's huge for the pastor to take those responsibility off their shoulders, and it helps them connect with people so much better. So think about, if you're a second cheerleader, think about those events, the parish carnival, festival, confirmation, those events where the pastor is out with the people. Think about how you can take everything off the plate, that all the details they don't have to worry about, and you just invite them to just come and be with the people. I think that would be the best way you can serve the parish. Let's wrap up here, and I'd love for you to just share two things. First, I'd love for you to share a word of encouragement or advice for first chair leaders on leading their second chair leaders. And then second, on a word for second chair leaders, just advice or suggestion or encouragement to second chair leaders. So let's go with the first chair leaders first.
So the first chair leaders, my encouragement would be to absolutely take the risk of sharing leadership with someone who could be an effective second chair with you, because that's what it is. The responsibility for a pastor or a CEO or anything is to make sure everything works accordingly, whoever you're responsible to, the archbishop or the board of directors or whatever. And so that responsibility is square on your shoulders, and you can't abdicate that. If you do, things don't work well at all, but you can share that. And so, trust, especially pastors, trust that this is actually the model that the church intends for shepherds, shepherd leaders. And we look to Jesus as that model. So, take the risk, trust in the Lord. So that'd be the encouragement part. For second chair, it's been my experience that it really is possible to have that kind of a relationship with a first chair leader, and it's very fruitful, and it's very fulfilling. If you're in a situation where you're not feeling that it's fruitful or it's faithful, then look at yourself first, and then look at the one that you're working with and see, well, what needs to change. And if every effort's given and it's just not working, well, like I said earlier, then listen to the Holy Spirit. Because if you clearly understand this role and this model, and you're willing to give yourself to that, then the Spirit wants to put you in a place where you're going to be successful, where the Spirit will be successful working through you. And the last thing I would say is this: the best thing you can do to be successful, whether you're a first chair or a second chair, is to have a support group of other first chair and second chairs. And we have that here in the Archdiocese. We have a regular monthly meeting with pastoral associates. We have regular ways as deacons to connect. So those two different second chair roles that I have. And I've become to understand now that I just turned 61, that it's my time now to be that for other people. So Diana and I in our ministry are now beginning to do just that. We're doing mornings of reflection for ministry groups, and being the connective tissue in our region in the Archdiocese for, say, RCIA directors to get together regularly and to benefit from one another and to support one another and to dream together and to learn from each other. That has been so exciting in this last year for me. So for what it's worth. Those would be my words.
I'm so glad you shared that last one. That's something we haven't touched on at all. And I can't believe I didn't think about it. But in that second chair role, it's really, I think it's easy to get in a place where you're pouring into other people and you're serving someone above you, but who's pouring into you and who is supporting you. And I think you're right. For it to be sustainable, you've got to have those people around you that aren't the people that work for you necessarily, but people that are peers that you can lean on and receive encouragement and strength from. I'm so glad that you said that. Well, Deacon Don, thank you again for your time today. And thank you for the great work that you do for the church. I hope that many are encouraged to follow in your footsteps through this, and look forward to seeing you. I hope soon. I'm going to be out there in August, right? End of August. I'll see you.
I'm pretty sure we're going to see each other in August. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. I am eager to depart this desert land. So,
all right. Thank you, John, for this opportunity too. And yeah, God be blessed by all our efforts here in the church. God's people be blessed.
Really great advice on both of those interviews, from just wisdom from people who've been in this role for a while. And I think a lot of wisdom in that part we covered about being just being a team player, working as a team, having each other's backs, that both of you know that you're not going to say something negative about each other in front of other people. That's just so necessary for that trusting relationship. I want to answer a couple questions here. I know we're a little bit past our time, but I also want to say, if you're watching this and you're a second chair leader and you have some questions that you're really struggling with, enter those now. I will not say your name. It will be completely anonymous. And if you want me to respond to you in an email or a phone call, put that in your question, and I won't do it publicly here. But I want to be a resource for you, because I know sometimes as a second chair leader, you don't know, who am I going to go to? Who can I talk to about these things? So here's one question. Question says, I'm in an office manager role, and there have been important changes that I have found out about from parishioners, but not from the pastor directly. How could I go about addressing this with the pastor so that changes I need to make on his calendar can go through the proper channels? This is a difficult thing, but I'm just a big fan of having honest conversations with people. And I would start by letting your pastor know, I am here to serve you. I want to help fulfill your vision. I want to help you be the best you can be, and I want to help you lead our parish the best you can. And in order to do that, it helps if I know things, and maybe our staff knows some things ahead of parishioners, and maybe let them know there've been a few things that I found out about that I could have helped implement even better. So first, I would ask this person that's asking the question, how often do you meet with your pastor about upcoming events and things that you need to know about? If not often, I would say, and I would say, kind of contrary to the two interviews that we had, I would say a second chair leader needs to have a once a week meeting with the pastor. It doesn't have to be lengthy. It can be like 15 or 20 minutes, but just a check in that says, hey, anything I need to know about, anything I can do to help you this week? How are you doing? I would highly recommend that. Communication is key. Regular check-ins help make that happen. But to this person, and to any conflict that you're in with your pastor, I would encourage you to sit down with them and talk about it in a supportive, encouraging way, not a critical way. Brene Brown's book, Dare to Lead, we've mentioned it on this webinar. I've mentioned it before. I think Joe's put it there in the chat. It has some great tips for how to navigate conflict. And here's another question that I had that I think is more common than we'd like to admit. What if I work for a pastor who's not a natural leader? They don't like to lead. It's not instinctual for them. It's not really in their gifting. And that's tough. If you're in a second chair role and you're a good leader and you're serving under a pastor who's not really a great leader, they don't have a lot of vision. They're not very intentional or very just aggressive in leading. They're just more passive. How do you help serve them, right? So here's a few things that I would suggest. Number one is help them understand the importance of their influence. Even if they're not like a gifted leader, their influence is so powerful. What they say from the pulpit, what they give attention to, what they affirm. And so, even if you're doing most of the leading and planning and organizing, the one thing you can't be is their voice and have their influence. And so, make sure they know about that and encourage them to use it for things that the parish is trying to do and accomplish. Secondly, if they don't really have visions and dreams for your parish, then help guide them in that. Ask them if we could have like a staff gathering, maybe a little staff retreat where we dream about the future of the parish, and let them know you'll guide it, you'll facilitate it, but you need them there. We do something called the Dream Pathway, where we just kind of write down what do we see today in our parish? What do we hope to see 5 years from now? What would we like to come and visit our parish 5 years from now and see and experience? And then what are some steps we can take to get there? But you also may just want to ask the pastor if he would join you in sitting in the back of the church and just praying, listening, closing your eyes and saying, what do we dream of seeing this parish look like? Help draw that out of him. What would he dream of seeing 5 years from now in the parish? Or when he leaves this parish, what would he dream of seeing it look like? And then you help him create some steps and plans around that. And then I would say, pastors, if you're watching this and you're not a super strong, assertive leader, that's the word I was looking for earlier, assertive, hire people that fill your weaknesses. What you're lacking, hire and staff your parish with people that have those gifts that you don't have. Empower those people. Let them do what they do well. Be permissive as much as you can to let them have authority. I will just say this: you can't be passive and micromanage at the same time. That's really frustrating for staff. So if you're not leading, you're not guiding, but you're just constantly telling people what you don't like, that's really frustrating, and people aren't going to hang around. But if you will, if you're going to be passive, then you need to give people more freedom to lead. But there does need to be someone leading, because if you have a parish with 5 leaders, that's a problem. So kind of bequeath that leadership responsibility to someone that's going to be over staff and ministries that can really have that authority, and you give it to them and you let everyone know that they have it. Here's another question. Could there be a situation where the second chair leader exercises more and more leadership to fill the gap of that first chair leader and creates a false view of having more authority than the second chair rightly deserves? Well, the second chair has whatever authority the pastor gives them. Obviously, the buck stops with the pastor, but the pastor can share that authority. In our book, Great Catholic Parishes, we say that shared leadership is key to a thriving parish. So I would encourage you you've got to negotiate that with the pastor where they agree to it and understand it. You can't take authority that's not given to you, but I think you can have the authority that they give you. I would also say, again, to everyone, I really encourage you to check out this book. It really addresses a lot of the challenges. It was written by people who've worked in the church their whole life. And I'll just end with this one thing that Deacon Don touched on. He said, if I ever came to this role and there was a new pastor and we did not have this kind of trusting relationship, I don't know that I could continue to work in this role. And there's a chapter in this book called Leaving the Second Chair. And it helps you navigate, when has this gotten to a place that it's no longer healthy or helpful for me? And something he says here, because a lot of times we can feel obligated to a parish, that I can't leave here because I can't leave this parish behind, but I'm miserable and I'm not able to use my gifts. Look, you can trust God with your parish. You are not the savior of your parish. But something you need to do is steward the gifts that God's given you wisely. And so you might be much more beneficial to the kingdom of God if you went somewhere that you were allowed to use your gifts. So consider that. You're not the savior of your parish. The hope and future of your parish does not depend on you, but you are in control of how you use your gifts and where you go and how you serve. So check it out. Thank you for hanging around. I know we've gone a little long today, but you'll get an email after this with all the information that we talked about here, and you can watch this later or share it with others. Thanks again. Hope you're having a great summer. God bless.